Hello, and welcome to the inaugural episode of Wicked.Stories. This is a place for true stories about the paranormal, the mysterious, and the things we cannot explain. The stories shared here will be told respectfully and without judgment. I'm not here to tell you what to believe. You're going to believe what you want to believe anyway. But you can listen, consider what happened, and decide for yourself. So settle in, get comfortable, and join me as we travel down the road of the unknown. Our journey begins with a few of my own personal experiences. Welcome to Story 1, The Voice in the Living Room. This is my first remembered paranormal experience. It happened in 1989. I was about 9 years old. We lived in a house out in the country. It was a house that was built for our family, and as far as we know, there was not another house on the land. The detail always stayed with me because people associate haunting or haunted with something that must be connected to an old house or something that happened inside of it. But sometimes it may not be the house. It may be the land. That evening, I was sitting in a recliner in the living room. The television was off and the light from the kitchen was shining into the room. My mother was in the kitchen balancing the checkbook. My baby sister, who was not old enough to talk, was sitting in her high chair near the bar, and my stepfather, he wasn't home. He was off working. While I was sitting there, I heard my mother call my name, Amy. The voice sounded just like her, and as if it was coming from somewhere between the kitchen and the living room. I answered, "Ma'am," but there was no response. I answered, "Ma'am," again, and said, "Ma'am, what do you want?" Then I heard her call out, "Hey, come here." So I got out of the recliner and walked into the kitchen to see what she wanted. I got in there and she looked at me. She told me something that I'll never forget. She heard it too. And she said that wasn't me, but it sounded just like me. Neither of us could explain where it had come from. Needless to say, we hardly slept that night. That was not the only strange thing that happened around that house. There were unexplained knocks and noises that members of the family heard over the years. Some people might say the house is settled. They may blame the wind, animals, plumbing, or any number of ordinary things. Sometimes those explanations make sense, but they do not explain hearing the voice of someone who is standing in another room and having that person hear that same voice too. I was only 9 years old, but the experience stayed with me. It was the first time I understood that something could sound completely familiar and still come from somewhere unknown. Begin. Story 2. My grandmother's house. Strange activity was not limited to our house. My grandmother lived in a house that had a history of unusual occurrences going back many years. Her home was located only a few houses away from the town's original hospital. Family members heard footsteps when no one was walking. There were knocks with no apparent source, and doors sometimes seemed to close by themselves, but we would just say that was the wind. As often happens in families, people tried to explain it away because you don't want to seem crazy. Someone would say it was the wind. Some would say the house was settling. Life would continue as usual. When you grow up around that kind of activity, you learn that people can become accustomed to things they cannot explain. They may still notice them, but they stop talking about them or questioning them. The unexplained becomes part of the house. It becomes part of the family. And before long, a door closing by itself or footsteps in an empty room are treated almost like any other household noise. Almost. Story 3. The Poke. Another experience happened at my mother's house. The layout of the house made it easy to recognize where someone was walking. There were stairs near the bedroom. Scratch that. Near the back room, which was like an entertainment room. And the steps had a very distinct sound when you come up them. One day I heard someone coming up the stairs. Scratch that. One day, I heard someone coming up those stairs. My stepdad was out in the adjacent room to the back room, as we called it, watching TV. And he had a habit of when he needed to get around me, he would poke me in the back, and I would move forward to give him some room because there wasn't much room in the kitchen between the table where we were at and the refrigerator. That day, I heard what I thought was him coming up the stairs. I didn't turn around, didn't look, didn't think nothing of it. And then I felt the poke, and my shirt literally caved in and touched my skin. Without thinking, I stepped forward. I mean, it was an ordinary reaction because I'd done it 1,000 times. But when I turned around, he wasn't there. And no one was behind me. The experience was different from hearing a strange noise or watching a door move. I had physically felt something touch the back of my shirt and poke me. Whatever it was had copied a familiar gesture closely enough that I reacted before questioning it. Much like the voice I heard when I was 9, it imitated something normal, something personal, something I would recognize. Story 4. Learning that the unknown was real to other people. When I was in the 8th grade, a friend and I worked on a history project involving the Salem witch trials. During the project, we used information from a beginner's book about witchcraft that my mother gave me. The book had been given to my mother by someone who practiced it. Until then, witches had mostly existed in stories, movies, and history lessons as far as I was concerned. This was the first time I realized that there was real people who practiced witchcraft and held beliefs that were very different from what I had grown up around, because I had grown up around Southern Baptists, very Christian beliefs. Our project caused a strong reaction at school. It was enough of a reaction that the same kind of project was not continued in later years. That experience was not paranormal, but it was part of the road that led me here. It taught me that unfamiliar beliefs are often judged before they are understood. It also taught me the word unknown can mean different things to different people. Sometimes it means ghosts or spirits. Sometimes it means a belief, a practice, or a way of life that someone has never encountered before. That is one reason I believe these stories should be presented respectfully. We do not have to agree about what something was. We only have to listen. Story 5. The Man with a Fishing Pole. Years later, I worked in law enforcement at a university. Part of my job involved nighttime security checks around the campus buildings, including the library. The basement of the library contained archaeological artifacts connected to the area's local history. One night after checking the library doors, I saw a man walking nearby. He was wearing clothing that looked like it belonged to another time. He had on overalls and a wide-brimmed hat, and he was carrying a fishing pole. He continued walking without acknowledging me. Fishing was not allowed in that location, and nothing about his appearance made sense for the area or the time of night. I was not the only person who saw him, though. My field training officer was waiting in the vehicle and saw him too. We searched the area. We did not find the man. There was nowhere obvious for him to have gone, and we found no explanation for what both of us had witnessed. Seeing something alone is one thing. You can question the light, your memory, or whether you misunderstood what you saw, if it was your mind playing tricks on you. But when another person sees the same figure at the same time, it becomes harder to dismiss. I cannot tell you who the man was. I cannot tell you where he came from or where he disappeared to. I can only tell you that 2 officers saw him walking there with his fishing pole, and when we searched for him, he magically disappeared. Story 6. A Voice in the Prison Kitchen. Later, I worked as a corrections officer at a state prison. During the night shifts, officers would conduct checks throughout the facility. Part of the early morning routine involved entering the kitchen and turning the kettles on so preparations for breakfast could begin. It was sometime around 1 or 2 in the morning. The kitchen was dark and quiet. I had already checked the area in the night, and there had been nothing unusual. Yet. When I entered the kitchen, I heard a woman's voice clearly say, "Hi." It was not faint. No. It did not sound like a distant television or a noise from another part of the building, because there was no televisions there, and there was nothing else in the building but food service. It sounded like the woman greeting me from inside the kitchen. It was actually near the kettles. I called out, "Hello," but no one answered. At that point, I thought it might have been one of our civilian workers, perhaps get, stuck or something. So I checked the different sections of the kitchen, including all the freezer areas. No one was there. There should not have been anyone there, period. After checking as much as I needed to check, I left the kitchen quickly. I got out of there. I noped it out of there. Working in corrections teaches you to stay alert. You learn to recognize voices, movement, and sounds before ignoring something can be dangerous. Because ignoring something can be dangerous. I apologize for my mistakes. I'm still learning here. I don't like editing. Back to the story. I knew what I had heard. What I did not know was who it was or what it was. And I'd like to add into that fact as well that I worked in an all-male prison. So hearing another female voice was either going to be a coworker or one of our civilian employees, which was wild. It was just all my hairs. I still get goosebumps thinking about it. Story 7, Walking Through Water. Another experience at the prison happened during an evening count. This was an open bay dormitory, barrack style. During the count, the inmates were expected to remain silent, sit up on their bunks, present you with their state-issued Department of Corrections number and ID so you could verify that they were who they were. It was around 9 p.m., which was what they consider master roster count, when I entered the second wing and began walking down the center aisle. As I reached one particular area, I stepped into something that I can only describe as a pocket. It felt as though I had suddenly walked into deep water and was walking through it. My body seemed to move in slow motion. The air around me felt heavy, and for a moment I thought I might pass out. I was just freaking out in my head because I could not pass out around these inmates with just me on the floor, with one officer in the station watching me. I forced myself to keep moving. And once I passed through it and got through it, it stopped. Later I had to walk through the same spot again. The same heaviness, the same pocket, everything happened again. Then as soon as I moved the area, it released me. It was the weirdest sensation. I cannot explain that feeling. There was nothing visible in the aisle. It was just the inmate sitting on his bunk, but he was looking at me, which was weird. Nothing I could say or look at could say, hey, that caused it. There was nothing. It was the only area that caused this. And it was weird stepping into it and stepping back out. I don't know whether it connected to the building, to something that happened there, or to something else entirely, or if someone had conjured it up. I know only how I felt. And I know it happened in the same place more than once. And this is the road that led me to Wicked Stories. Those are only a few of my experiences I've had through my life. Some involve voices, some involve physical sensations. Some were witnessed by other people. Others happened when I was alone. I did not expect every person listening to interpret these experiences in the same way. Some of you may believe they were paranormal. Some of you may search for ordinary explanations. And some of you may not know what you